Alright, so in this tutorial we'll review the basic steps for creating a simple single table Microsoft Access database. We'll be using Microsoft Office 2007. I apologize for the voice here in advance. We're working with what we've got today. In this tutorial we'll review creating a table and then using the form and report wizards, and also how to create a simple query. So if you have Microsoft Access on your local machine, you'll probably find it either as a direct link like I have right here, or under All Programs under the Microsoft Office folder. Note that some versions of Microsoft Office that aren't designated with the professional designation do not have Microsoft Access in them. So you might have Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but you might not have Microsoft Access. But if you do have Microsoft Access, you can access it directly via the program start menu. If you're taking this as part of an introduction to computers or other course, you may have access to the RDS, the remote desktop services, and that's the way I'm going to try to access the system here. So I'm going to access this through apps.msjc.edu, and this relies on an internet connection and also having the credentials to be able to log in. For students in my classes, it's their Blackboard username and your student ID number for the password. You may be asked to re-credential again through a second window. If that's the case, you'll use the same credentials again, except that you'll have to type the ITS and a backslash, which is up by the backspace. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Microsoft Access. Notice we're essentially accessing these programs in the cloud, so these are not on my local machine, so it's going to take a little bit longer, but it gives us the benefit of accessing these programs without the benefit of having them locally installed. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Connect. And here's what I'm talking about with the re-credential. So it's ITS and then the backslash, which is up at the top of your keyboard, not the one down by the question mark. And then Blackboard ID, and then student ID. And again, it'll be a little bit slow going in, but once it loads, everything should work pretty much in real time. All right. Give this 5 or 10 more seconds, and hopefully that'll be enough to get the RDS spun up. And this will only be as good as our internet connection and the server on the other end. So looks like we're partway there. There we go. Okay, and so this looks like, and notice we're running this in a web page, but it's actually the same application that you would run if you were running Microsoft Access locally. Okay, so my first step is I'm going to click on create a blank database. So that's step 1. And here I'm actually saving to my documents, which is in the cloud. If you were running this locally, you could pick a location on your desktop or on your flash USB memory stick or on the C drive. Just pay attention to where you actually store your database, so that if you need to submit this or access it later, you'll know where it's at. Okay, so I'm just going to call this, I guess I'll just call it Database 1, which is what was on there. And I'm going to click Create. And this first step is where a lot of people get lost. Now, I'm using Microsoft Office 2007. 2003, you'll go through a similar set of steps. What we need to do is find the choices here. We need to go to Design View. It looks like you're in Design View, but this is a button telling me that I could go to Design View, and I really need to get into Design View. So I'm going to click on the little down arrow, then click on Design View, or I could have just clicked on that little icon. And then I need to give my table a name, so I'm going to call it Rolodex. I'm going to just create a simple 3-field table here in this tutorial. Keep it real short. You know what? I'm changed my mind. I'm going to call this customer. So this is my customer table. All right, and I'm going to right-click on this little key, and then click on the little key again, primary key, because I don't really need a key. The key is used to relate this table to a field in another table. And since we have a single table, we don't really need a key. So I'm going to say name. This one as my field name, and then over, name is a reserved word. How about first name? Then I'll come over here on type, change that maybe to text. And the only other thing I would say to do here would be to change the field size to something that's reasonable. I'll change it to 15. And then I'm going to go to my next row, which is going to be the next field. And so this will be, say, the last name. And again, text. Maybe change this to 20. And I'm just going to do something simple here. I'll put the person's age in. That's going to be a number. And notice that there are different types here. I have my yes, no, currency. So the different types are here. Alright, so once we have the fields laid out, notice we haven't actually started keying in our data, but we've set up our what we call our data structure. Then I'm going to come over here and click on Customer Table. Excuse me. It's saying I must save the table first. I'm going to say yes. And now I can actually start entering in data in this table view. So I'm going to put in Dwight Duffy, age 45, go to the next row. Bill Gates, we'll just go with some computer people here. I have no idea how Bill Gates is, how old he is, but let's just say he's 57. And I can continue to enter in records. Notice each column here represents a field, first name, last name, age, etc. You want to get in the habit of hitting refresh after you enter in some data. Right now it's not so important, but when we start getting other objects like forms, reports, and queries, the refresh will be important. Okay, so we're ready to move to the next step, which is to create a form. And we're going to do that, and it's a little different in 2007. I have to go to the Create, and then I'm going to create, and I have to go to More Forms, and it's kind of hidden here to go to the Form Wizard. Once you find that, it's just straight through. I select all the fields, that's the double arrow, click Next. Column is fine. Click Next. Pick a style that you like. And then click Next. And then we give our form a title. So I'll call this Customer Data Entry. And then I'll click Finish. And that is it. Literally, 45 seconds and you've got your form created. And notice here we now have a form view, and it says we have 2 records down here at the bottom. And again, I'll want to refresh, and then if I go down here at the bottom and click on the new or blank record, I can actually type in another customer, Steve Jobs. Again, he's probably, I don't know, he's probably getting close to 60. And if I hit the arrow, it'll move to the next one. Let's put in Grace Hopper. She was a pioneer of computers. And she's actually deceased, so I don't know how we do that. We'll say she's 101. And again, you want to get in the habit of refreshing all. If you do that, then, and notice we have customer data entry over here. Now if I go back to the table, and then if I refresh, right, Steve Jobs and Grace Hopper now kind of added into our database. So you can enter in records in a kind of row by row in the table view, or you can enter the records in kind of one record at a time using the form view. And you can also edit the records in that way. So we can move, using these arrows, I can move through the data. Steve Jobs, Grace Hopper, so on. Okay, we're ready to create the report. Again, we come up to Create tab. And this one's easy. We just go over to Report Wizard. And same thing we did with the form, almost identical. Click the fields you want, click Next. The grouping, we'll probably just leave and click Next. Sorting, I'd probably do the last name first, then do maybe the first name. So, if there were several Smiths, Al Smith would be before, Tina Smith. And tabular is fine. And pick a style you like. And we'll give it a name. We'll call it Customer List. When I click Finish, notice that the report gets created. Kind of a nice looking. It takes a minute for it to build a report. And you can see what the report looks like. And it's also put over here on the left side. When we're all done, and if you submit the database 1. I believe it's AccessDB, that's the extension on the file name, Access Database. All of the objects that you've created that show up over here on the left side will be part of the file that you save. In fact, there's nothing further you have to do to save it. By virtue of running this and entering this data in, right, the file is being created and updated. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is create a query, and I'm saying, let's say in our query here, I want a senior list. That'll be people over age 55, which obviously is most of the people here, but it will exclude myself. But we'll at least be able to see how the query actually works. The query, and again, we'll want to close this print preview. Go back to here, and we're going to head over to Create again. So in each case, we use Create. Come way over here, and this time we don't want the query wizard, we want the query design. So for the form and for the report, we'll use the wizard. For the query, we'll just use the design. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add for Customer because it's the only table available. And then I'll close this. And then I'm going to double click on each field, and you'll notice that it drops those down here. Do the same thing for last name, drops it in the next column, and then the age. Remember, we were going to try to create a query that only showed the senior citizens. So under criteria, or in the criteria row, we're going to say greater than, equal to 55. Excuse me. All right, and then we simply hit the run, and notice that's going to pull out just the records of our customers that are senior citizens. And then here we would right click where it says query 1, we'd save this and we'd give it a name, and I could call this my senior list. There we go. And we can review our work, and we can look at something at the table view, the query view, the form view, and the report view. Okay, that's it. Remember that if you're working this in the RDS cloud, your file is going to also be in the cloud. So you'll, if I actually exit out of Microsoft Access here, I can actually access the cloud here in My Documents. And from here, you could, just to follow up on this briefly, from the My Documents in the cloud, you could right-click, copy it to your clipboard, and then you can log out of the cloud and paste it into your local drive. It's a little bit tricky to move your files around, and of course you can do it the other way. If you're on a local machine, you can copy something to the clipboard, go to the cloud, and then paste it in, to the cloud if for some reason you needed a file in the cloud. Again, this is much slower sledding than if you were just doing this on your local machine using Microsoft Access locally. But I wanted to step through how to use the RDS because some people may not have access to Access. Oh. anyway, that wasn't real exciting. But if you log in at the college, in the technology building, you will by default, by virtue of logging into the machines, have access to the cloud by just clicking on Documents and then My Documents. You'll be able to see that file. Okay, but you should be able to access that document from there. All right, this concludes this tutorial.